Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Color Readaville. This is Donna, and welcome to my coloring chat. Do you guys remember these books? Those who have been on the channel for a while, they were so much fun last year. We did like a month-long Dover Spark dive into Dover, and I loved this book, and I haven't colored in it in so long. This is by Maggie Swanson, and I thought, hey, let's get reacquainted. So, in our live stream over the weekends, I had a request for a little better explanation as to how I use brush markers versus nibs versus chisels. So, I thought I would kind of talk about that a little bit while I'm coloring. So maybe that would help somebody out. And, since it was asked and I said, hey, I'll make a video. So here we go. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start using a brush and I'm going to work on the daddy bear here. Okay, I'm going to work on the daddy bear here. And I am by no means an expert. I am not an artist per se, as in like professional artist. I am a colorist, which I believe is art, and that makes me an artist, but not professional. Okay, so I do have the Master's Touch markers, which is a brush on one end and a chisel on the other. I only bought a very small set of these at Hobby Lobby when I first saw them pop up in store several months ago. And I used a coupon. They're $19.99, but I used a 40% off coupon. This was marked as I thought it was marked as a skin tone set, but apparently it was not. It doesn't specifically say that, but I think I thought maybe skin tone, something of that effect. But either way, I thought they were pretty colors, so I grabbed them. So those are the ones I'm going to work with today for the brush. They're pretty old, so hopefully we won't have any issues with ink amounts or anything like that. Excuse me. And then the regular markers that I'm going to use for like chisel, if I don't use these, if I use chisels and nibs, they're going to be the Cool Touch. Touch Cools that I received in the 168 pack. So that's the ones I'll use for that. Okay, so let's get started without further ado. Now, I just noticed when I put my finger in front of the camera, I was like, oh gosh, my fingernail is dirty. I've been picking at art supplies and stuff today, and I think I've got stuff up underneath them. Okay, anyway. So I'm going to start out with the burnt sienna, and all I'm going to do basically right now is put in where I would put like darker areas and things like that. And when I use a brush to do that, I don't push down hard, okay? These brushes are pretty flexible, but I still don't push down super hard. I just kind of, I brush it literally, just little stroke marks with the brush. And that's how I kind of just work that around. As you see, I'm not pushing down on that nib or anything. And you can, like if you're lettering or something like that, you can definitely, with the ones, these that do have a very flexible nib, you can do that. And I do prefer the brush markers that have that flexible nib other than that really hard fiber tip nib. Not a fan of those. Okay, so I just kind of work my way around using kind of like brush-like strokes. And you don't necessarily have to. I mean, you can like color with these two, but if I'm doing like outlining areas or anything like that, I try to use a fairly light hand and kind of a brush stroke. I can't really get you in any closer, but if you look, see if I can hold it up. Like right in this area here, you can see where those were actual strokes. And I know I've been asked if I was using the flicking method, and I'm not sure if that's what you refer to as flicking. Maybe it is. So that is kind of what I do, but I don't, like flick, flick, flick all the time kind of thing. Okay, so just working my way around. So I hope everyone is doing well today. I'm still a little under the weather, but I feel a lot better than I did when we streamed the other night. So I'm thankful for that. How was everyone's weekend? What did everyone do? Leave me a comment and let me know. I had a fairly quiet weekend. I, of course, wasn't feeling all that great Saturday. And then yesterday, I still felt pretty rough. I mean, I felt a little better yesterday, but I think I feel better today. But as you can hear, I'm kind of sniffly. So I've still got that drainage going on, but we'll see. Hopefully, in a couple days, that'll all be gone. That would be nice. I'm really trying to avoid like doctor's visits. Ugh, I don't want to go to the doctor. Do not like going to doctors. Never have. My doctor pretty well knows if I'm walking in there, don't pay attention to what I'm telling you because I don't want to be there. And I'm not there unless I feel it is an absolute necessary thing for me to be there. Okay, add a little bit here, maybe a little bit. Just shadow around the eyes, just a tad. And yeah, like I said, I'm pretty light-handed with my brushes because I don't want, anything bad to happen to those. And I found 101, which is yellow ochre. That's what I'm going to go in with next. If I would have had more color choices, I would have chose something else. But I grabbed this set because it was sitting near my desk. And that way I could kind of, show that to you guys. So that's the one I'm going to go in with now. And I do like the fact that these little master touches actually, the lids snap on. Before anybody runs out and buys these, I will give you a little bit of a warning. I think these are the same as the Shuttle Arts and Artify, not Art and Fly, Artify. And let me show you what happens with that ink over time while I'm thinking about it. I was going to show you guys this too, since I've got a picture done in it. So, okay. Do you guys see all the shadowing here? All right, let me show you what it is. Yep, you see that? It's where I colored this one last year. And it goes, yeah. And I did have a page here when I colored, but what this is, and it was dry when I put my book up. But for whatever reason, those Shuttle Arts and Artify, they tend to do this. I have no idea. So that's just a warning about these Master's Touch. I like them a lot, but they do look just like those markers to me. So I'm a little weary about saying, that I would recommend them because that's just something I haven't really figured out yet. I saw that I missed this. And Deb, I know you're watching, and I know you had already said, Donna, you missed the foot. It's becoming the joke these days. But that's okay. And maybe I'll put a little bit of a shadow in right here. Just a little bit. Okay. All right. So this may not be a perfect match, and I hope these blend together okay. So let me see. And this, again, this is with a brush, and this is going over a larger area. So I'm not just flicking. I'm actually using that brush, and I'm using it very similar to how I would use the brush, or not the brush, but just the fine nib on any other alcohol marker. I do think you might do better with like back and forth strokes when you're using these, because if you start doing like circular strokes, I think, it might wear the nib down faster. But other than that, it's very similar. I do hold it at more of an angle. You'll see when I'm using brush markers, they are held at much more of an angle than I would be holding a nib. But it's very much the same idea behind it. I'm not really doing anything. When I'm doing larger areas, I'm not really doing anything much differently than I would be doing even if I had the other. I do press a little harder when I'm doing larger areas. As you can see, If you can see, the brush is actually flexing. So I do put a little bit more, not a lot, but I do put a little bit more. I do press down just a little bit more for that. Okay, so come in here and do this. And I think this one has probably been used a good bit. I think I can see where it's starting to like lighten up a little. It's getting a little harder to cover areas. So this one may be bone ink. Like I've said, I've had these for a while, and I would keep them and use them for, different type things, because I do find that I do use a lot of browns and colors like that. So when I bought them, I just sat them over by the desk, and I was like, well, they'll be there, because it was more of when I saw them, I was like, oh my, I want to test those, because I had already tried the artist lofts at that point. And when I saw the Master Touch pop up, I was like, yeah, I really, really want to try that. And as I've told you guys in the past, and for you guys that are new, when you're coloring with alcohol markers, if the ink dries, you'll end up with a line in your art that you can't get rid of. So try wherever your end is, wherever you have a break in your coloring, try to do it in an area that it's a little inconspicuous, just in case you don't get back, quick enough. And then even if I would say to go, if you're doing two ends, definitely go between those, because once that dries, there's going to be a line and you can't get rid of it. So basically, while you're working, keep the ink wet. Don't let that close up on you. Otherwise, you'll pretty much have to go over that same area again to try to blend that line out. That is the biggest difference between using alcohol markers and pencil is, with pencil, you can kind of get to an area and just walk away and then come back and pick right back up where you left off. You really can't do that when you're using the alcohol markers. All right. So good. Those colors were a little closer to each other than I thought they were going to be. So that's good. I kind of like to have the shadows even be maybe a little bit darker. Not a lot, but maybe a little. And if you find that, you can always come right back in. That's the cool thing about alcohol markers, is you can keep layering them on top of each other without causing any damage to your paper. This time I don't really want to like outline like I did before. I'm just more or less adding a little bit of darker areas in just a couple places where, I think I want it to be a little darker. And then when I do this, we'll switch over and we'll do Mama Bear with nibs opposed to brush. And you'll see that it's not that much of a difference. I like brushes because I feel like I can color faster with them, to be honest. It does seem to me that the nibs take a little bit more time to cover the same amount of an area. And you'll probably see that when we get over here and start working on Mama Bear. Okay, so there you go. That's with brush markers. And like I said, I'm not a pro, but that's what you do there. And that's how I operate, or how I operate. That's how I use those. That's how I operate, people. Okay. All right, I'm going to use 97, which is Rose Beige for Mama. And this is in, like I said, the Cool Touch. And these lids also stack, which is really cool. Okay, so same basic premises, except as you see, I do hold it more upright when I'm using my nib. With a brush, I'll be further back on the pen or marker and using the brush. When I use the nib, I do generally go further down and hold it at less of an angle. It's still at an angle, but less. I also have a tendency to work in circles when I use the nib. I use more circular motion. Sometimes not, but if I'm doing an area like that, I will use a more like circular motion. So, like I may go back and forth, but if I'm in an area, like I'll go do like lines if I'm trying, because, when you see me do this, it's because I'm trying not to let that ink dry. Because once that ink dries, you end up with a bunch of streaky lines because you can't make them go away. But when I am in like a smaller area, you'll see I'll start to circle. I'll use small circles. And I think a lot of people color with pencils like that also. So, but I do it even with my markers. And you can see where that line was starting right there. I almost waited too long to get back to that. And that is the secret to coloring with alcohol markers and having a fairly smooth finish is going to be not letting any of that ink dry. And I didn't actually do Mama's shadowing yet. I'll do some shadowing on Mama Bear in just when we finish this. So with me, sometimes I do my outlines or shadowing before. Sometimes I wait after. It depends. I go back and forth between those two. And, as long as it looks the way you want it to look when you're done, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you achieved it. I know a lot of people will tell you light to dark, and a lot of people will tell you dark to light, dark to light. So, there again, I think it comes down to personal preference. And sometimes, depending on what kind of paper you're using, it is better if you're using a thinner paper. The Dover paper is actually pretty good. If you're using a thinner paper, a lot of times it's better to, if you're going to lay an outline down or whatever, to go ahead and even let that dry and then come back in, because even using the alcohol markers, what happens with the thinner paper is the marker actually, the ink as it goes into the paper fully saturates that paper, and it kind of gets a bleedy, smeary look to the ink that you laid down. So instead of blending, it's pretty much just pushing and displacing ink. So paper is a big, big deal too when it comes to how you're going to lay down your markers. And the best way I can tell you to figure that out is play with it, because I think everybody colors differently. And as you play with different types of markers or other medium, and as you begin to work with those on different types of paper, you'll start to see what works best for you. Okay, and you see how I had to go down through here, but right here, I left that, but that was a small enough area that I didn't think that it would be very visible, because I knew when I came back into that it was going to be a situation of there would be a line there. So, and I'm going to do the same thing like right here. I'll start there coming around to these areas. And that way, if there's a line, it's not very visible and your eye's like not going to be drawn to it. Where if it was like in the middle of an image, there would definitely, it would draw your eye to that. All right, guys, I'm going to hope my camera doesn't mess up on me. It went out a few times when we were streaming the other night. If that happens, I'll just need to restart the camera. Using it as a webcam like this is a beta. And, with beta, until you get a full release, there's always going to be little glitches. And I think that's a glitch. It just seems to disconnect sometimes when using it as a wired Wi-Fi, using it as a wired webcam. Okay, so you see, you really can't even see where that line was. There is a little line there. If you get really close, I can see it, but your eyes aren't getting drawn to it. So that's how I combat those lines in my alcohol colorings, my alcohol ink colorings. So you can see I'm in a smaller area. I am honestly I will do some back and forth, but I'm doing a lot of circular motions. I believe that gets the ink down into the paper real good, and it gives you a smoother effect. At least that's that's how I feel. So, and that's why I do that. Okay. And this way, you know, I did the shadowing on Daddy Bear first. I'm going to do it second on her so you can see what differences there are based off how you do that. Okay. Oh, Mama's arm. Mama's arm. But I saw it. Stop laughing, Deb. I can hear you from here. Okay. Okay. All right. Now let me try to give me just a second. It's going to take me a minute. I'm going to pick another color. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm afraid I've got the mahogany, and looking at it, it looks like it's going to be too dark. Looking at the swatch, it looks like it's going to be about right. So, here we go. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right, so same. I'm going to do this exact same way I did with Papa Bear, and we'll see. And it's going to be darker when you first lay it down because alcohol ink does lighten as it dries. So you really aren't going to get a feel for what it's going to look like until it has a chance to sit. So we shall see. I think it's going to be okay, though, as far as color. And when I'm like doing the outlines, I am using very fine touches and even kind of stroking even with the nib. So I do that brush and nib kind of back and forth. So, you know, and that's why I said, you know, when I was asked the question in the stream that it was so hard for me to explain because I don't do it very much differently, very differently. And I thought that probably the best way would be to actually show this. For, you know, how I do it. And I know everybody's different. I'm still not really super, I'm still learning blending with alcohol marker. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but I generally do my heavy blending on my own when I actually pull out maybe 3 different pens or markers to work with. So yeah, I generally do that on my own because I do not feel that I'm proficient enough yet to be able to do that on camera, you know, and talk at the same time. So maybe one day I'll sit down when I am playing with them like that, and I'll just do like a video with no sound, and then maybe I'll voice over and then do like a speed color kind of thing, just so you guys can get an idea. You know, like slow it down in some spots so you can really see what I'm doing, speed it up through others. Okay. Okay, so that is how I do that. So if you look at these two together, you know, what do you think? I mean, not color-wise, of course, they're different colors, but that was 2 different techniques, one with brush, one with nibs. This one, I did the little outlines and you know, shadowing or whatever before I laid down the top coat, and this one was after. So you can do it however way you want to do it. You know, enjoy it, have fun. It's about enjoying the process. It is not about, it's not so much about the finished product. So don't let, you know, your desire to have something, don't say, oh, you know, I really want it to look like this, and stress yourself out, because then you know, the process is supposed to be what's so fun. This is the WG07 warm gray. That's what I'm going to go in and just do their little noses. because I want them to have their nose colored. Okay, so there they are with their noses colored. So that's awesome. I was just looking because I'm like, did I miss Daddy's arm somewhere over here? Because I'm like, is it wrapped around? I don't see it. So, okay. Wanted to make sure Deb wasn't still laughing over there. Because I just had a feeling maybe Deb was still giggling. But, sometimes her giggle box gets flipped. And join us sometime in chat because, when we do streams, because she gets her little giggle box tripped over sometimes. And it's just the cutest. Okay, so what I'm going to do as far as kind of giving you an idea how I use the chisel is I'm just going to go ahead and do like the sky background. And generally it's like when I was asked about using the chisel, my first kind of response was, yeah, I don't. And I try not to because I have kind of learned how to control them better than I used to be able to control it. But I still don't feel comfortable, working with the chisel. So I do kind of try to avoid it. Okay, so I'm looking for a color here. I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring you guys. Where's my colors? I'm looking for a number 87 and I'm not seeing it. Maybe that's why I have an open spot down here that I don't understand why it was there earlier. My pup may have grabbed a marker and took off with it. I wouldn't put it past him. Really, really wouldn't. Okay, so I'm going to have to probably do it a little darker than I wanted. I'm going to go on with 66 baby blue. It's a little darker than what I wanted to put down, but at least it'll kind of show you. Now, when you're coloring with the chisel, you're coloring, you've got a large thing to work with. In my opinion, it's large. Of course, you can hold it on an edge and get more of a point, and that is what I tend to do more than anything. Very rarely do I color like this with the chisel. So, all right, let's just kind of see what happens. And this even makes me nervous because I still don't really like to use my chisel. Okay, so I just kind of come in and I pray a lot, but no, really. I do use the edge of my chisel, especially if I'm getting into tight areas. I use the very edge, not like flat like this, but the corner, I guess I should say. I use that corner so I can get a much thinner line when I'm trying to get into areas. Like that. And quality of chisels are always different. I don't think these touch markers have very good quality chisels on them, to be honest. So it does make them a little harder to work with. But you can cover an area with a chisel much faster than you can cover that area with a nib. Now with a brush, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes with a brush, sometimes every once in a while, if I'm using, say, my Copics, I may flip it over and go to the chisel, but it's rare. It really is rare. But if I am in a larger area, sometimes, even though I've got that brush, I will kind of flip it over and use the chisel, but not super duper often. And the only reason I really wanted to show you guys the chisel too is because when the question was asked, it was brush versus chisel. So I wasn't sure if we meant, which nib. So we're going to cover it all here. So I hope I answered the question. Now, if you get into a bigger area, that is when I will kind of turn the chisel just a little bit and start using more of the total surface of like just the tip. I still don't ever put it down like this. I don't know that I've really, maybe once or twice on a bigger background. And as I get into the tighter areas, I turn it back over to its little corner. So it's very much a back and forth between that. Okay. Sorry, I know I got like just quiet. Okay, so when I start getting in these tighter areas and I want to do this all with a chisel, you know, most of the time I would have already flipped back to the nib by now, but try to do it all with chisel. There we go. Because it does seem to lay down ink faster, and that's important, I know, especially when you're doing backgrounds, because you want that ink to stay wet. So the faster you can get that ink onto the paper, the less smudging, or not smudging, but the less lines and things like that you'll have in your background. So it is very important when you're doing the background to make sure that you are working, you know, evenly, quickly, and effectively. And again, you'll see I very much tend to use circular motions, even with the chisel. And you have to come back and forth to these areas, because if that ink dries, so you'll see me like do a little bit here, like kind of bring it out a little further, but then I'll stop and come back down here, because you've got to keep those stop points wet. You can't let the ink dry. I may just let that one sit because it is so small until I get back over to it. Keep looking to make sure my camera's working okay, and that I haven't locked up, because this is about the point in time that it starts having some lockup issues. Generally about the 30-35 minute mark. Okay, KK. All right. And you kind of hear those chisels. I don't like, I mean, that's just the way, I don't like the way the chisel really feels on the paper. And to me, I don't think chisel ends are quite as juicy as nib ends, but that could be a perception, you know, me, you know, perception is everything. So, and that's what I've always told you guys is, you know, when it comes to recommendations, it's, you know, I can make recommendations, but everybody has their own preferences. And what I really, really like, other people, you know, may not enjoy as much. And vice versa. You know, it's just like I have a lot of you who love their pencils. I'm learning slowly to work with pencils, but I don't really enjoy them because they take so long. I am much more, and always have been, and I'm sure this is a fault of mine, I am into instant gratification. Hence why I have full set syndrome, probably, and all of that. But sorry if the camera's shaking a little bit, because it almost feels like this chisel's wanting to almost grab at the paper when I'm using it. There. Okay. So now you've seen me use the chisel. So that is that. I am going to stop this video right now for now, and I'm not sure if I'll finish this up in a color and chat or if I might finish this up on my own, but I wanted to use the video to show you guys how I personally color brush versus nib versus chisel. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I hope it has been informative and helped some of you out. I appreciate your support. Thanks for being here. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We would love you here. If you are subscribed, thank you so much. And there are links in the description of this video to our Facebook group, as well as to this particular coloring book. It is the cutest thing ever. And until next time, guys, peace, love, and happy coloring. Bye, guys.